there's nothing I can do. I feel so helpless to help my sons in this moment. Like, both of my children are so upset, and I don't know what to do. Hello and welcome to the Dad Dialogue podcast. I am your host, Laurence. Slightly bit of a different episode for you today. More on that a little bit later. Just want to remind you can go over to daddialogue.co.uk, find out more about the show. You can also sign up to be a future guest on that show on the contact page. I would love to hear from you. So yes, today is going to be a slightly different episode. There's no guest today, just me. You're stuck with just me. I thought I wanted to share a couple of stories that have happened to me as a parent, something that I think is a useful thing to hear about, some challenges that we went through as a family with some health concerns with our oldest son, Micah. And I think that speaking to other parents after this incident happened, I learned that it was more common than I maybe anticipated going into the situation, how it unfolded. So I think kind of sharing stories and hearing stories about this sort of thing can just make you a little bit more aware. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not trying to be a doctor to anyone. I'm not trying to tell you how to kind of raise your family, but I just think having this awareness of other stories and what parents have been through, how you can react to things, can be a really useful part of forming our parenting journey. So I wanted to try and get the story out there so you can listen to it and kind of add it into your bank of knowledge. It all started back in June of 2023, so about a year ago from when I was filming this, a little bit over a year ago. Micah was around about 2.5, just under 2.5 years old. And we were still living in Hong Kong at this time. And he had been to the park. One of us had taken him to the park. He got into the playground, had a little walk around. And he came home and he had a insect bite right in the middle of his forehead. We didn't really think anything of it. We just assumed it was a mosquito or a gnat or something that might be a bit itchy, but we'll keep an eye on it. And then very quickly, over the next few hours, it started to swell up a bit. The next day, it swelled even more, and it started to kind of affect his breathing a little bit. So yeah, we knew something wasn't right in the morning when we were getting ready to go to work, so we decided to take him to hospital rather than go into work and do a normal day. We arrive at the A&E. His breathing is still kind of obstructed. He's struggling a little bit. His face is more swollen. And they gave, in the A&E in Hong Kong hospitals, they have like a priority system and you know what your priority is. So I think there were 3 levels. Obviously, like urgent, high priority cases get seen much quicker, medium priority, and then low priority. I think we came in at medium priority. So they did the triage type thing, took all the information. The nurses spoke to us, found out what happened, and then we were waiting for a very long time. And he was in an okay situation at this point. We could tell that there was some impact on his breathing, but genuinely he had energy. He wanted to do things. He didn't want to be sat waiting in a waiting room with nothing to do. So what we actually did, this hospital was right around the corner from a public playroom that we would often go to and a library. So I took him, just walked down the road to the playroom or the library. I can't remember which one we was. We just went, I think it was the library. We just wanted to spend some time to try and, use up some of his energy, engage him, because he was still, he's a toddler. He wanted us to do stuff. And my wife stayed at the A&E with our ticket, kind of keeping me up to date with the numbers, because there's like a system we can see how many numbers away we are, and we could see it was really far away and the numbers were going down very slowly. Suddenly she calls me and she says, "They're going really fast, you've got to get here." So I have to run back. And we get there in time and we go and see the next stages, I guess. There's very systematic, you go through the different people. And we eventually see the doctor. And he just says, "We don't know what it was. It's an allergic reaction. We'll give him this antihistamine." And then for whatever reason, we give him that antihistamine when we get home. And I think the next day is actually worse. I think the swelling stayed the same, but his breathing had got even worse. And that was obviously concerning for us. So we then rushed back to A&E, and this time we came in at higher priority, saw the doctor straight away. They said, right now, you could have him admitted to stay overnight, or we can give you a different antihistamine medicine. and go home. But you do need to be very cautious. So we decided to take the different medicine and go home because we could tell that he was just getting a bit worried and a bit upset by the whole process. So we decided to try and rest at home with this different medicine. Hopefully that would be something that would help. And we had hoped that the calming down and just, he just needs some rest, and that would kind of address that situation. They never really gave us much information at that time about a condition or anything else to be looking out for, to be worried about at that time. It was just, here's an antihistamine, this will make the swelling go down, this should make him feel better. Just give him lots of rest, keep his fluids up, all the sort of things that you anticipate when someone's unwell. So it eventually clears up. We obviously keep monitoring it. We don't have to go back to hospital. He gets all better. Hallelujah. All good. So that was June of 2023. That was the first time we'd had to really take Micah to a doctor, even aside from regular checkups. He'd been a very healthy baby and a healthy child, thank the Lord, up to that point. So we were incredibly blessed for that to have been our first situation. We didn't really have any other problems up to that point. So fast forward a few months to October 2023, and we're now living in the Netherlands. We've been here a few months at this point because we were moved in August. So we're pretty settled, things are set up. We have some routines, we know what's going on. And I wake up in the middle of the night and just hear this screaming, and I think Yinka had already been to see him and brought Micah in, and he was just trying to scream, crying, but he couldn't because he just couldn't really breathe. And all we'd known leading up to this point was that he maybe had a little bit of a cold, bit of a runny nose. It's October, 2-year-olds have runny noses all the time, so you don't really think about it. And he's, as I said, he's trying to express himself. He's trying to communicate, but he's so scared, so worried that he just can't do it. He's crying, he's screaming, and he can barely breathe. We can tell that it's just really, really affected him. So we dial the emergency services, which over here is 112, ask to speak to the ambulance, ask for an ambulance, and explain what's happening. They say, we'll dispatch one. And then the lady on the line said, take him into your shower room and put the shower on as hot as you can and just try and calm him down. So at this point, I think I started getting YouTube on my phone for him to watch. He was watching Thomas, and we're sitting in there, and just having that distraction helped calm him down a little bit. But the wheezing was really excessive. Lots of noise, lots of work for him to get any sort of breath whatsoever. So obviously for us as parents, really, really scary in the situation. I don't even think we would have thought about the time with the insect bite. It's only really much later that we've been able to connect some of these dots up and start to understand. At this moment, we're just so worried. Amazingly, the ambulance arrived minutes of us calling the emergency services. It must have been 4 or 5 minutes. Obviously, the middle of the night. I don't know where the ambulance came from. So the paramedics come in. They try to give him an oxygen mask. They can tell he's low. I think they check his stats. They do their thing to know that he's low on oxygen in his blood. So they're trying to give him a mask that is just oxygen. But he's terrified, he's scared, he doesn't know what's going on, he doesn't know these people, he doesn't know these men. And he refuses to put the mask on. He really is fighting it. And they try to give him, I think also within this mask, they would also put in the medicine. I think that's how they went down. But either way, they wanted to give him oxygen and they wanted to give him the medicine, which would help open his airway, which I later learned and understood was salbutamol, which is the same thing that's found in an asthma inhaler. Because they couldn't deliver this medicine or the oxygen to him, they were like, we're going to have to take him to hospital. It's the only place that we can make him better. And he's still obviously just screaming, crying. I think he threw up a little bit at one point simply because I think he was screaming so much he threw up on the floor. So obviously my wife is looking after Ezra, trying to, right in the middle of the night, it must be midnight, 1 a.m. I think, sort of time. So she's trying to keep him calm and, help him, but obviously help in whichever way she can with Micah. And the paramedics say, only one person can come in the ambulance. So we get in the ambulance. It's pretty fraught, just trying to get ready. I need to put some clothes on. He needs to have some clothes on. I need my wallet, keys, like that kind of thing. Getting out the door, I remember, was really tough. And I do try to kind of make a mental note of when I go to bed now, of where everything is, what I need, like my wallet and my keys, if an emergency were to happen again. Thankfully, praise the Lord, it hasn't in a situation like that. So we're in the ambulance. Again, they're trying to give him various medicines. I think they do kind of just about get a mask kind of on him, and he's still watching things on my phone. Starting to feel better. Something I realised is definitely not cheap out on data. I used to cheap out on I normally wouldn't have much data on my phone because I don't use my phone too much when I'm outside of the house. I don't tend to watch videos. I prefer having lower data on my phone, so I'm not able to watch Netflix or YouTube when I'm outside of the house. But I realised in that moment I probably do need it. So I think after that I started changing my plan to have more data available to me. Anyway, we get to the hospital very quickly. The paramedics gave him a teddy bear in the ambulance, which we still have to this day. And we get checked in. They take us to a room, this amazingly clean, nice, calm children's hospital. There are toys in the room. And he gets transferred into the bed. And he's relatively calm. And I think eventually he kind of accepted having the mask on, and it was fine. And he was just kept watching the thing on my phone. And I think we must have stayed there. My wife and my other son took a taxi to come and visit us. And then the doctors explained to us, as he's young, he's 2 years old, his airway is not as developed as ours are as adults. And he had a small virus, like a cold. And it's affected his breathing. And because it's closed up a little bit, that's a big amount for him because his airway is smaller. And the salbutamol, the same drug they would use in an asthma inhaler, helps open that up. So that's what they kept trying to give him. They would give that a few times, give him oxygen. And I think over a few hours, they would come in and give him those things, go away and come back again, and obviously check all of his stats and things. And amazingly, over the few hours that we were there, he did get considerably better. And we were able to be discharged. So I think we must have been there 5 or 6 hours in total, 4 or 5 hours. I'm not sure. But really nice experience at this hospital. As I said, really beautiful children's hospital. There was a waiting room down the hall that had lots of toys and things in. So once my wife arrived with my other son, I was able to take him down there and play. So they could have a bit more. So my wife could have some time with Micah as well, and just kind of keep them engaged and things. All the doctors were lovely. They did a great job, and they checked us out. We went home. We got a taxi home in the middle of the night, whatever time it was, 5 a.m. or something, and. Obviously the next day, Micah just slept pretty much the whole time. And, we thought that was the end of it, I guess. At that point, they didn't really say anything else about what happens in a future situation. This might happen again. They didn't really mention that. They just said, this thing has happened. This is why it's happened. We're going to do this. He's better now. You can go. That's kind of how that hospital stay went. So we were very happy in that situation to not be kind of coming away with a list of things to think about or things to do. We obviously, did a bit of research and we kind of understood that this is quite common, and they told us it is very common, but we kind of took the doctor's trust that, okay, this is where we're at. And then we can fast forward another 2 months to December of that last year, 2023. And again, Micah's a 2-year-old, he's nearly 3-year-old at this point. He's getting sick randomly, little colds, coughs, sneezes, nothing big, nothing major. But I noticed that he's got this little cold going on. And there's just one moment he's lying in his bed, and I can see his tummy is trying to do all the breathing. He's having to use all of his muscles to do these really big breaths, which I saw as something that one of the doctors was looking out for when looking at him in the hospital. So yeah, I see this. He's definitely struggling to breathe. It's not as acute as it was before. He's not kind of super upset, super scared, or super sad or anything. I can just see his breathing is a little bit more difficult. So I decided to just go and see our GP, our general practitioner, who's a bit more local, and think, okay, I'm pretty sure that this is something that needs to be addressed. Managed to get an appointment. I must have found the GP at 11, 12 o'clock or something, because it had only really been apparent at that point. Managed to get an appointment that day because I was saying, I think this is quite urgent. I think this should be addressed now. And they managed to make time in their kind of urgent care or emergency care. And I walked to the GP. At this point, we didn't have our lovely back feeds that we cruise around town in yet. So I walked down there to the GP. It's about a 15-minute walk or so. I've obviously got both boys. I've got Micah and Ezra at this point because my wife's at work. It's just a normal day. And the doctor can see, oh yeah, this is just a similar thing as before, just less acute. We need to do the same thing. She took his blood oxygen levels. She said it's far too low. We need to give him some medicine. We need to open up his airway. And then she tried to use a blue inhaler with a spacer. But again, he was just not having it. He just kept saying no. He kept pushing it away. It would make him more upset, make him fight for his breath even more. So we kept trying. And then she said, okay, you're going to have to go to hospital because I can't send you away from here with his blood oxygen being so low. And if he's not able to use this medicine to help him, then he's not going to be able to feel any better. So then I think she assumes I either have a car or a bike. So, okay, so you can just go back to the same hospital as before and you can just check in there. I was like, okay. So I'm thinking about how long looking up on my phone. And it's like a 30-minute walk or something. So, yeah, so you can just drive over there. I was like, oh, I don't have a car. So, so you cycle? I was like, no. I was like, well, how did you get here? I was like, oh, I walked. I was like, oh, okay. That was obviously an odd thing. So she was like, well, you need to get there. You can't be walking there. You need to get there. So she called an ambulance. And this started one of the most impactful days on me, at least as a parent, in terms of feeling as though the world is like crumbling down around me. Because we're at this GP. And I have Ezra in the carrier. He's 1 year old at this time. And we've also taken the pushchair. And I'm thinking, I know how big these ambulances is because I've been in one before. I obviously have the pushchair and like my backpack and like a bag of we just go around with all this random stuff to, for our days out. So, oh my gosh. So like the ambulance is going to arrive and for us to get in and go, I'm going to have to like move all the stuff out of the pushchair into my bag and these other bags I can carry. I need to fold down the pushchair and I was trying to do all these things. And like Micah was still he was like waiting behind the assistant's desk, like in the reception area. And he's just crying and crying and crying. He's like getting so upset. I'm not very good at asking for help with these sort of things. I feel like I have to try and do everything myself. In that situation, I should have stayed with him and asked if someone could help with the pushchair and the bags and things. But for whatever reason, I didn't. I feel like I've got to try and do everything myself. I'm like panicking. The ambulance actually arrives, again, very quickly. They come in, they try and get him on, and he's getting so upset because like I'm not right there with them. He's not having his like calm. I think I give him my phone to watch something, but again, he's just not being able to calm down. He's really, really struggling. Getting very, very upset. Understandably, in that situation. Very, very terrifying moment. So flash forward, like some people do eventually volunteer to help. The assistant is helping me carry some things as well. And we go out to the ambulance. He gets checked in to the ambulance. They go through the same process of trying to give him oxygen and the medicine. But he's more used to having the mask on now. So he's been through that before. So he's a little bit better at doing it in the ambulance. Go to the same hospital, go into a very similar room in the A&E section, the arrival section. So we're in that room and then we're there for a few hours and it's the same process. It's the exact same thing. We need to give him this medicine. We need to make sure his oxygen's up. We need to make sure he's breathing better. But for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to react in the same way. His breathing doesn't get that much better. His levels aren't going up, and most importantly, he's just not calming down. Every time they come in to try and do something, he's just so upset for whatever reason. He's been through it before. We're trying to explain to him that these people are here to help you, but he is like so upset. He's trying to watch his things, and this was another one of those moments I often think back to. And this was a real world crumbling moment because I just lost control. So I had one son in a hospital bed screaming and crying. And then Ezra, who's in the carrier, he's obviously just coming along for the ride. He hasn't been able to have much engagement. I'm obviously making sure that he's having all of his food and his drink that he needs to be having, making sure he's clean and everything, having his changes. But he's not getting what he wants, which would be, fun, engaging things or, comfort, toys, books, whatever it might be. So then he bursts into tears and starts screaming, and they're both just screaming at the top of their voices and just crying. And I just there's nothing I can do. I feel so helpless to help my sons in this moment. Like, both of my children are so upset, and I don't know what to do. So I'm trying to help Micah and the doctors and the nurses, just look after Ezra, look after your smaller one. Like, we will help him, but he's just not listening to kind of what they want him to do. And it's a real struggle to get him to put this mask on for some reason. Like, sometimes he would be fine with it, but sometimes he just wouldn't. And these were some of the times he wouldn't. And like that moment of feeling, up until this point in life, if either of my sons had been upset about something, I would be able to make them feel better by doing something, by saying something. I can provide comfort, I can make them feel better, but at this moment I couldn't. I could make Ezra feel a bit better by showing him that love and comfort that he hasn't been having over the last however long. But I couldn't help Micah. I couldn't. He needed to have this medicine, he needed to have this mask put on, but he just did not want it. He probably wanted the same. He probably wanted to be at home, he wanted to be in bed, he wanted to be having some comfort, whatever it might be. And he couldn't have that. He couldn't have what he wanted. And there was nothing else that I could do to make him feel better in that moment. And that was really tough for me. That was like a really big moment for me, I think back to sometimes. And I think that's the thing as parents. There will be times when there's things that we can't do for our children because we're not the experts. Like, I'm not a doctor. I can't provide that care for him that only a doctor can. So, yeah, that was tough. I think the nurses and the doctors would have left at that point, and again, it's just kind of every 30 to 40 minutes they'd come in and do the same sort of routines and go again. And we were there for much longer this time. We were there for a few hours, and then my wife came after she finished work. Because she's a teacher, she's not really able to see her phone much. She's not really aware of what's going on until she's actually finished up at school. She comes straight to the hospital to find us. And obviously at that point, with these situations, can be a bit easier if he's getting upset at the doctor trying to, treat him and help him, because obviously one of us can help him directly and the other one can look after Ezra. So it's getting a bit better. I remember seeing so many different doctors. We must have cycled through a lot of the different rotations. And it was getting later and later and later. And they kept saying to us, our call is for you to leave today. But it got to a point where we knew it wouldn't happen. And they said, we're going to transfer you to a overnight unit. And for whatever reason, I was just really upset by that. I don't know why. I can't even think about it. It's the place he needed to be. It's the correct decision. He needed to be there because he was sick. He needed that support. He needed that help. But for whatever reason, I just didn't really like the idea. It felt like such an imposition on us as a family. I'm not saying anything bad about the doctors, like they're making the choice they needed to make. It just made me upset that we had to do it. So we then start thinking logistically what's going to happen. I don't have anything, we came straight from the GP's office, which had been there, in the early afternoon. I hadn't planned for any of this. I've got some snacks with me. So my wife brings Ezra back home. She then packs a bag. And she's trying to find out if Uber can come and pick up a bag and take it back. Because it would be such an imposition on Ezra because at this point it was way past their bedtime, it was 8 o'clock or whatever, to bring him back again, back and forth. And obviously you try and, if you can not have a 1-year-old in the hospital as much as possible, that's the choice you make, being around other infections or whatever. So she does all this research trying to find a taxi company. I think she starts off with other local taxi companies first, but then ends up just getting an Uber. And the Uber just comes to the house, picks up the bag, comes and drops off at the hospital. Oddly though, the Uber driver wouldn't come out of the car and drop the bag at reception. I had to go out to the car and meet him. Thankfully, Michael was sleeping at this time after we'd been transferred into the overnight unit, the room. So I go out and get the bag and come back, and thankfully he stays asleep. The nurses were listening out just in case he did wake up. But that stay at the hospital was, I'm not going to say nice, but far better than I thought it could have been. The hospital that we stayed in was very nice. They clearly put a lot of time and effort into designing it. There's clearly a lot of money behind it. And these are the times you start to see that Netherlands doesn't have public healthcare. It is a privatised system where you've got to have insurance. But you start to see some of the benefits with this here. But this hospital was incredible, completely in private room. There was like a screen that could come over. I could put like YouTube up on there for him to watch. There were some toys in there. There was a chair that turned into a bed for me to stay on. And yeah, it felt comfortable. It felt nice. I think that might have been one of my concerns of staying a night, was the comfort level and not being able to sleep if we're in this strange environment, if it's noisy. But it wasn't like a ward with other, there were other children on the ward further down, but everyone had a private room, so it was quiet, it was calm. And again, the care there was great, and the doctors were really nice. And through this time of staying there overnight, with seeing the different doctors, the residents and the attending doctor, we learned that this was a very common thing. I can't remember exactly what stats they told us there, but I've done a little bit of research since, and they told that, I saw that one study says that about half of children will experience some form of respiratory issues before the age of 6. 1 in 2. Attached to that fact, or that piece of data, they found that those children didn't necessarily even have risk factors after that. It's not even like that's something that leads into other problems further in life. It's just something that happens to a lot of children. So they were saying that this is very similar to asthma, but a child can't be diagnosed with asthma until they're much older. So you treat it in a similar way, but we're not saying that he actually has it. So yeah, over time, I think through the night, again, every 45 minutes, they'd come in and put the mask on that would deliver the salbutamol to him. And they'll check his levels, and obviously every time they'd wake him up, he would be really upset. Understandably, he was very tired. But we make it through the night, we get some breakfast, and we're there for the day. I think my wife takes the day off so she can look after Ezra at home, and obviously comes and visits a couple of times as well. And slowly but surely he starts to get better. And they give us an inhaler, asthma inhaler, and a little children's spacer thing for us to take home. And they said he'll have to use this, I can't remember exactly, but for quite a long time. And there was like, okay, we're not going to give him the salbutamol now. You're going to do it with the inhaler. We have to see that you guys can do it and that he can take it properly before you'll be discharged. And we're getting really close. Like there was like a time, I can't remember what time it was, but we were getting very close to having to stay another night, because obviously they're not going to discharge you after a certain time with the amount of time we had been there. They basically didn't want to, they either wanted us to leave at like 6 or 7 o'clock or stay the whole night. They didn't want to discharge us later than that. So we're praying, we're just hoping, we just want to go, we just want a bit of comfort, a bit of normality. And, he does really well at adapting to use this inhaler. And yeah, we come out and we come home and we follow the instructions we've been given using that. And yeah, everything's good. It takes them a while to kind of get over that, and we just have to be on the lookout for when these attacks happen. And it's kind of as a treatment for it. So yeah, we also have a brown inhaler. I honestly can't remember if we got given this steroid inhaler at the hospital at the same time, or if it was given. It might have been given from our GP from a separate thing. We might have gone back to the GP because he was having a similar reoccurrence where it just felt like we were having to give the blue inhaler a lot. So he then got put on and then none of these attacks were anywhere near as bad as before, because we could address them. We could take him into the shower and steam him and give him the blue inhaler, and it would normally make him feel better. But it felt like there was a time when we had to be giving him this inhaler very, very frequently. And we're like, this isn't how it should be. So yeah, we spoke to the doctor and they gave us a brown inhaler. I think this is how the story went. I can't believe I don't remember this exactly. But yeah, anyway, they prescribed us to use the steroid inhaler twice a day, then once a day after a certain time. And that's like more of a preventative measure to help his airway and his muscles and his lungs around the area stay a bit healthier, less likely to get inflamed. And, praise God, we've had no real issues since then. There are times when, yes, he'll have a little bit of a cold, so we can tell that his breathing's impacted, so we'll use the blue inhaler again, put him in the shower again to steam him. And genuinely it's okay. And obviously, now that he understands it a little bit as well, that's been through it, his reaction is more calm as well, which helps manage the situation, because the more worked up he gets, the worse the situation gets. So, yeah, and that's where we're at. He's, it's still a journey that we're on. It's still something that we have to be thinking about. I give him his inhaler every time he goes to preschool, just in case something that does happen. I'm still using the brown inhaler as well. So it's an ongoing journey. Now it's obviously very straightforward. But there's just a small amount of me that wished I'd known a little bit about how common this was before it all happened. I was so surprised to have the doctors tell me that, this can happen to, half of kids might have something like this happen. Granted, we did a lot of classes before Micah was born, but we never did sign up to do a first aid class. So you may be more informed than I, and good on you if you've done that research to know about this sort of thing, to be a little bit more prepared. Fair play to you if you are at that situation. But I'm sure there are other people out there that don't know about this. And I hope that's kind of helps, just have some awareness that children's breathing can be impacted quite easily because they're obviously small and growing, and trying to stay calm, trying to help their airway by getting them into a moist environment, like steaming out in a shower, putting the shower on very hot, getting the room nice and hot and steamy can help breathing, and generally just trying to avoid, particles of anything, like dust particles, smoke particles, having a clean environment for them to live in. I remember when all this was happening, I went on an almost battle against the cleanliness of their bedroom, of trying to identify if there was dust hiding somewhere that was getting into the air, and what devices we could have in there. So we've got an air purifier in there now, and things are okay. I just wish there was some amount of me that maybe had heard someone else's story before this all happened, or just done the research myself that happened to see it. So if you're listening to this and this has helped you learn something to think about, I'm glad. That was the idea of it. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just trying to share my story, and maybe this has helped you just think about, just to be a little bit prepared. I'm not saying you have to go out and do anything. It's not like you have to go out and make arrangements for anything, but just the knowledge of how something can happen and how someone else reacted to it. It's just another one of those little things we put in our parenting brains that might come out at some point. I genuinely hope, for your sake and for your child's sake, that doesn't happen. I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone. That traumatic time of feeling helpless for your son or your daughter in someone else's case. It's heartbreaking, and it's not something that we want to go through. And my heart goes out to the parents that have children that have more severe medical needs, that have this feeling more frequently. So if you have a story that's maybe similar to this, let me know. I'd love to get you on the show, hear from you. I think it's important to have these stories shared with each other. You can hit me up on daddialogue.co.uk. Contact form, go onto the contact page. You can get in contact with me there. I really appreciate you checking out this episode. I forgot to say at the start, but I think I'm gonna call this series Dad Diaries. If you've made it this far, you already know that's if I've called it that, because it will be called that on your platform. But yeah, Dad Diaries. Me, alone, talking to you guys. I appreciate you taking the time to listen today. I really do. Have a wonderful day. See you soon. Goodbye.